Hello, tank tops and sweaters. Kelly and Yvette here, and we have a special guest with us today that we are so excited to have. This is Katrina, and she is joining us to talk about healthy eating habits and how that revolves around your self-care. She is an MS nutritionist, an ACE health coach. She's her BS in biology and psychology, and she specializes in teaching you what you need to know about nutrition, fitness, holistic health, food psychology, and building lasting healthy habits. She's an amazing website, Passion for Plants. I highly suggest you go and check it out. She does one-on-one coaching. She also has retreats and just really amazing information on building that healthy relationship with food. So welcome, Katrina.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here today.
So Kelly and I are all about self-care this month, the month of June. And we wanted to dive into that healthy, the healthy habits that revolve around food, because I feel like food and nutrition can completely get away from us. And I feel like a lot of people may not have that healthy relationship, as you well know. So what does a healthy habit mean to you?
Yeah, I love that. To me, a healthy habit is really something that we have on autopilot that we can do, whether it's something that's a daily habit or maybe it's a few times a week habit. To me, healthy habits are like I walk in when it's like nice weather, I'm walking every single day pretty much as a non-negotiable, like to the point where I'm tired of seeing my neighborhood, but I keep doing it. If I don't like get out for like an actual trail or to walk somewhere else, I'm like, well, we got to do the neighborhood walk because this is a healthy habit I have. And it's like, unless I'm like sick or very unwell, it's non-negotiable for me. Right. So that's sort of one thing. Another thing is kind of like how we eat. It can be a very intentional, healthy habit that once you've built it, it goes on autopilot. So to me, really a healthy habit is something that you've done the work to integrate this new behavior. And that takes a lot of upfront mental load, if you will, right? To create this new habit, to go out of your way to do things differently. And that's the hard part, the part we have a hard time sticking to. And that's really what I help people work through, because we know it's not just like that whole, I hate that saying, it takes 21 days to build a habit, because research has shown it takes so much more than that. And I hate that we I don't know, media kind of took that catchphrase and really ran with it. And if you've ever done something for 3 weeks, it's very easy to stop after 3 weeks still. So it's like, there's got to be that follow through there. So really, I feel like building habits is multifaceted, but I always tell clients too, and just my audience, I'm like, there are plenty of days where I don't feel like going to the gym or going for this walk, but I still do it because it's a commitment I made to myself. And again, barring like illness or injury, right? I'm capable of following through, and that's a non-negotiable I have, right? So that too, to me, is kind of part of the habit. Is like, do we ever feel like brushing our teeth twice a day or maybe more? Probably not, but we all do it, like, because you have to, right? Because you don't want cavities. So it's kind of, to me, it's one of those things where it's like, not only is it on autopilot, but it's also something you intentionally do because you've committed to yourself that I'm going to take care of myself. And this is one of the ways I'm doing it.
I love that. I love that committed to yourself, that phrase. It just really resonates with me, because I think as a mom of, 3 kids that are getting older, and through my whole adult life here so far, that's been a hard thing, especially for my generation. I came, committing to yourself. We're taught to be selfless and to give and to do.
Totally. Especially as mom.
To commit to yourself, to say, no, Yvette and I say this all the time. You have to put your oxygen mask on before you can take care of anybody else. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't take care of ourselves and commit to ourselves to create those healthy habits, then how are we going to help anybody else do it? Yeah. How do we model it? How do we teach it if we can't do it ourselves? So it starts with us for sure.
Right.
I love that commitment to yourself.
Yeah. And I think too, I work with so many moms, and that's the thing, unfortunately, right? Is moms are always like everybody else, every kid in your kid's classroom, their parents, like everyone else is on the priority list, and you're literally like top 100 priorities. You're not there. You're like on the like page over, right? And it's crazy because it's true. I mean, that saying of like, how can you pour from an empty cup? We've all heard that, but it's really like, I think so many moms especially are like, well, I don't have the time, which is valid. Moms don't have the time, but it's also to some extent, there's kind of that hard truth of like, do you make the time? How
Right.
can you make the time with your kids? What age are they where you can fit these things in? Because when you show up for you and you take time to make sure you feel good, well, guess what? Everyone notices that around you. Like that has such a huge difference on your kids, again, whatever age they are, but on all the people you're with every day. So I really feel like that's one thing, you know, you don't just commit to you, but you also commit to being a better, happier, fulfilled version of you for the people you love.
I love
Absolutely.
that, definitely. And so Katrina, shifting into the healthy relationship with food, like that's so fascinating to me because I don't think I've ever, I mean, I've heard that, but I've never like dove into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're like, how do you even get started? What does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, a healthy relationship with food is one where you're not feeling out of control around food. You're not feeling restricted around food. You're not feeling like your eating is dictated by food rules or by, I don't know, some arbitrary diet that you went on growing up, cough, cough, South Beach, Atkins, I don't know, like whatever crazy stuff was going on back in the day, right? Like, and I think too, especially women who grew up 90s, early 2000s. Oh my, we talk about diet culture today. I don't think I'm like younger. I only know about this because this is like my work, and I find the history of diet culture so fascinating because you go back in time and it was brutal. It was brutal back then, right? Even like 80s, like brutal time
Weight Watchers. Mm-hmm.
Oh
brutal
yeah.
time for women to have a body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, it's really this whole thing of our default setting today as women, no matter what age, is to not have a good relationship with food. So that's why it's really important to figure out like, well, where do my eating habits come from? A lot of women come to me and they're like, well, I have to intermittent fast because I don't want to gain fat. And I have to stop eating after 7 p.m. because I heard that you gain more weight after that. And I can't eat carbs with dinner, and bananas and oranges have too much sugar. And I'm like, where did this come from? Like, where did you hear this? You know? So really it's like one, becoming aware of where's all this BS. I don't know if we can use language, so I'll refer.
Yeah, you're good.
Where does all of this bullshit come from, really? Like, where is this, like, where did you get these ideas? And then two, I will say, this is a big piece, is it takes a willingness to even look at this, because a lot of people do want to lose weight and they're like, well, the only way I know how to get there is through a diet, which is fair. And that's why I'm a non-diet nutritionist. That's what I call myself. But that doesn't mean I'm anti-weight loss. Like if someone wants to lose weight and they have a good reason for it, I would much rather help you build sustainable weight loss habits than you going on some crazy, like some keto diet that then in a year I have to help you deal with that because now your metabolism is messed up, right? So all of that to say, it's really like having a healthy relationship with food is you have your conscious eating framework, is what I call it. You have guidelines for how you interact with food, and you have a structure. So it doesn't mean, that's what I think there's a big misconception too, is people are like, oh, well, intuitive eating or having a good relationship with food means it's like la-di-da, you eat like s'mores for breakfast every day if you want to. And I'm like, that's not it either. Like what? Like we're so on one end of the spectrum, when in reality, it's like you have a structure for how you eat foods you enjoy. To me, you leave out foods you don't really enjoy, because if they're not bringing satisfaction to you, then what's the point? We eat really nutrient dense foods, right? Because we want to feel energized, we want to be vibrant, we want to reduce risk for chronic disease. We probably want to be at a reasonably healthy weight for our bodies, right? Like all these different things. But that's really what it is not living dictated by what diet culture has taught you, but more so creating an intentional framework for conscious eating.
Wow.
I love that, because it's like you're just trying to help somebody create a healthy lifestyle that's sustainable. And we are now, Yvette and I are older than you, and so we were
a little.
But like our generation, you know, it was sit at the table till you eat everything on your plate. So not only do you have the diet culture, you have a little bit of like the trauma
that comes
along with how you were treated with food growing up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a generational thing, right? I got that whole thing. They're starving kids in Africa, like eat what's on your plate, which is like funny. It's like, oh my gosh, geez, mom. Okay, I get it. what do the kids in Africa have to do with what's on my dinner plate? But like, okay, so we've got a lot of that, like the
Oh,
clean
yeah.
club going on, while
Mhm.
simultaneously there's all this pressure to be super thin. And this too, I work with a lot of clients from a lot of different cultures, like different like ethnicities. So you get into like Indian culture or like Mexican culture, the food culture in those like groups. And not that we have this too in like more American culture, but the food pushers, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
there's still so many family members, so many people will be critical of what you look like and what your weight is. And like so-and-so gained weight, like, oh my gosh, right? But then they're like, here, have 3 portions of this dinner. So it's very like, it's very weird. And that's why I think too, it's like having a healthy relationship with food isn't something that like is optional. I think it's something that's necessary, because if you're not creating a structure for what eating looks like for you, someone else will do it for you, I promise. And it's already happened.
Right.
I love that you said it's not optional, it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we, as a culture, as a society, and as a world, we overlook. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think that's something that we quite grasp or understand, that it is such a necessary thing to have that healthy relationship
Mm-hmm.
and to build those healthy habits. And you're right, we go from one extreme to the other extreme of the spectrum. We're not like in the center balancing anything out. It's like that panic of, oh my gosh, I have to lose,
Yep.
10 pounds. So, and I need to do it right now.
Summer's coming. I have to
Yeah.
wear a bikini for 4th of July. Oh my gosh.
All
Yeah.
the ads with the summer body, create your summer body. Yeah.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. So I really think it's like everyone has an eating framework. The question is it helpful for you? And is it how you want it to look? And then I think too, I always think long-term, right? So again, I'm young. My introduction to nutrition was because of a big health scare in my family. So my get-go has always been, I am interested in long-term health, like maintenance. And I have this joke. It's not really a joke. I'm very serious, but it's kind of a joke. I'm like, I want to be able to walk like 5 miles when I'm like 90 or 95, right? That sounds ridiculous, but that's my whole thing. So I'm really thinking long-term. So too, I think about what's the sustainability of someone's habits. If your eating framework right now is you, like you said, Yvette, panicking and then going on a diet for 2 weeks and then feeling like crap because you've cut out like half the food groups that you're used to eating. And then come like 2 weeks from now, you end up binging and feeling like crap again. Like, in what world is that sustainable if you plan to live till you're 90, right? Like, it's not.
Right.
Can you see yourself doing this for the next 40 years of your life? Like, I don't think so. So
I love that, because that is a definitely outlook and perspective that I don't think everyone really has, of sustaining yourself through an older age, because so many people, I think, live right now and are living in the now.
Which, like, I mean, kudos, living in the present moment, but we got to take that foresight too, right?
Well, yeah, if you want to be here for more present moments, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like, you have to invest for your future, even though we want to, or, for retirement, even though we like to spend our money now, right? You have to take care of yourself now. It's very similar in my head. I'm like, definitely live for the present, but expect to live till old age. And how do you want to feel at that point? And even like next week, how do you want to feel? Next month, how do you want to feel? Right. So,
but that's encompassing self-care.
Right.
In general, right? That's how we should be approaching it, or how we could be approaching it. Is, that longevity of how do we take care of ourselves now so that we can have those moments in the future and we can be sustainable. And
I do find it fascinating that as a culture, we are so into like our skin looking super young, and we will spend thousands of dollars on products to help our skin keep us looking younger. But yet we don't really think about what we're putting into our bodies as much, and how that actually affects how we look and feel as a whole person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like our choices, especially in America, as far as food goes, it's just not we just don't make it a priority like we should.
Yeah, so I'm from Denmark originally. I've grown up most of my life in the US, but I've always had like one foot in like Danish culture and 1 foot like very much in American culture. And so it's very interesting because Denmark is like a polar opposite to the US in a lot of ways, especially in the way of like exercise is ingrained. A lot of people like don't necessarily work out, but they like bike to and from work and they walk everywhere and they like do like recreational sports, you know, but not everyone like goes to the gym. Here our exercise is like we go to the gym, which like I'm a gym, like I love going to the gym, but it's very interesting because it is so different. But I really think too, it's kind of that tricky thing of like, I feel like there's so many people that don't have the skills to cook and prepare healthy, delicious meals. And that's one thing I really noticed. I went to cooking school like 10 years ago now, which is kind of crazy. So that was one thing that was so pivotal for me. And I'm always telling my clients this, I'm like, the most important skill you could learn to take care of yourself is literally to prepare food that tastes good and is nutritious. And so many of us don't have that skill. So many of our parents' generations here growing up didn't have that skill. So many, most of the time it's women who are the default, you know, food preparers, right? In the home. They don't enjoy cooking because it's not fun when your kids are like, I don't want to eat this. I want mac and cheese. You know, when it becomes a chore, who wants to cook? So then that's passed on to the kids too, though, right? Like you have this negative image of your mom cooking meals for you where you're like, well, I have no interest in that. So we're kind of in this weird place of like convenience food has never been more convenient, but no one knows how to cook. No one has the skills either, right? So I always take it from like people, we all have the autonomy to make it more of a priority. So it's kind of that gentle push of like, hey, this is a crucial life skill. Like, oh, we kind of got to get it together because no one's going to come, like DoorDash can only save the day. I mean, you know, do you want to rely on that? Like, I don't know.
Every day.
Right. So
yeah, no. And I think that's 100% true. I think that I know I am trying to change the narrative with my own kids, like cooking. And I have one that's vegan. She's been completely vegan for I think like almost 4.5 years now.
Wow. And
teaching them how to cook and trying to make it a fun thing. Like everybody come in the kitchen and help me chop. And let's, you know, my husband started a garden in the past couple of years. And so we're like, okay, we grew all this spaghetti squash. Let's find some fun recipes.
Yeah.
What do you guys feel like eating with it? You know, but just, I think that's the thing is just trying to change it instead of like another chore to do is how can we make this a learning time and a family time and a spending together time, or even just a creative time if you're on your own, right?
Right.
Of what can I do with this that I've never thought of before? But I think it is like just starting to change that narrative from that convenience and it's a pain in the butt to cook and I hate it to how can we make it a little bit more enjoyable. At least that's my thought.
And I completely endorse that. And that's really what I encourage people to take is that perspective of like, most people have a family of some sort, whether you have kids or you have a partner or like you know, have friends that you want to cook with more. It's that whole thing of, well, how can we make this more interesting? How can we find new recipes? How can we experiment more with flavors and textures and ingredients? Because that's something too. I think this comes back to the whole relationship with food. So much of the time we think, well, if I'm going to cook from home, it better be something healthy, or it can only be this one type of thing that I cook. Or maybe like, you know, you have 2 staple meals and maybe they're a little more indulgent than what is needed for like a weeknight dinner, right? So you kind of like, most of us, I think, again, have a default setting for, well, what is our dinner routine or what can I cook? What's in my like wheelhouse to do? So it's like expanding outside of that. Well, what would it look like if you tried a new vegetable once a week? Or even if you took the same veggies, but cut them in a different way, use them in a recipe in a way you haven't before, right? Because I get a lot of people too who are like, well, I don't like a lot of vegetables, to which I say, one, you're no longer 10. I'm so sorry. You need to figure it out. Like get it together. As someone who hated also all vegetables, and now I've also been vegan for like almost 10 years. I'm like, if I can do it, I promise you can too. Like it's okay. But just really challenging yourself and kind of like, I always call it, you know, like you kind of have to parent yourself a little bit. Like it doesn't matter if you don't like Brussels sprouts. You're going to try them 3 ways before you decide that you really don't like them. You know, like you're no longer a child. You got to be an adult and move on is my kind of take on it. That's a bit of the tough love. I'm like, we can't afford to not be eating half of the vegetable, you know, section in our grocery store just because we ate boiled broccoli like when we were a kid and now we don't like it, right?
But there's so many other things we can do with broccoli that, you just, like you
Oh my
said,
gosh.
let's try it 3
So
different
many
ways.
things. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so funny. Broccoli was my thing. I hated it growing up, and now I'm like, oh, I love broccoli, right? But that was my thing, was overcooked broccoli, and now I'm like, that's disgusting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't have to eat it that way. So Kelly, I endorse the way you're bringing up cooking with your family. I love that.
It's not easy, but as a working mom too, everybody's got to take turns cooking. Like everybody's got to help out. Can't just be on one person.
Totally.
We sit down and make a menu, and who can cook this night and who can cook that night.
Yeah.
And things like that. And I'm lucky because my kids are older and they can do it. I can leave them in the kitchen and they're fine.
Right.
But even as when they were younger, we tried to say, okay, like this is what's going on this week. What do you think? What does dinner look like? Because, if there's a night where we've got baseball and drama and this and that, like, okay, maybe we need an easy one that mom's got made ahead of time and it's a cold salad, or something like that. But I think it is just really taking that intention to plan and make the decision to say, I'm doing this for myself and for my family. I think that is one of those things. I did not grow up in a family that ate very healthy. Just wasn't, there was 5 of us in the house and it was just not it just wasn't a priority. Right. Of course, they didn't know as much then either. So I think just trying to change it.
That's another thing too, is like, at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to that hierarchy of needs, right? Like if people are living in a family where, it's a single parent household, or parents are working multiple jobs, or who knows what the case may be. There's a lot of reasons parents don't have mental capacity or time to prioritize healthy eating. And then too, again, I'm there's outside factors, and then there's personal autonomy and responsibility for making sure trying to feed your kids healthy at least sometimes, right? So it's kind of, again, that balance, but it's really like, how can you make it easier for you? So and you bring up a great point, which is like, it can be frozen veggies, right? That you pop in the oven, and your 12-year-old could maybe do that, right? Yeah. Like that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be. That's another thing too, is I think we have a lot of preconceived notions about, well, what does healthy eating look like? Looks like making a meal from scratch, which no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Right. So it's really like, again, coming back to your relationship with food. Well, where do these ideas come from? More importantly, highlight them and then throw them away, and then replace them with more beneficial ideas around food, such as like healthy meals can be frozen vegetables and some sort of protein and a grain, and that's fine. Right.
I love that. Yeah. I love how you're breaking that down, because I think that is something that's stuck in people's heads is, oh my gosh, healthy meal means, or clean eating means I have to prepare everything, and everything has to be from scratch. It can't be any other way. And that's super ingrained, I feel like, in all of our heads of clean eating and healthy eating, where you're right. It doesn't have to be that way. That's not what it means.
Yeah. So you bring up a great point, Yvette. I loathe the term clean eating, because literally, what does it mean? Talk about diet culture to an extreme, right? It really, when you look into, when you think about this term, clean eating, what does it imply? It implies that all other food is dirty and bad, which okay, not true. Even processed food is not dirty and bad. Do you know what I mean? Like processed food has a time and a place for everyone, right? Whether we choose to eat it a lot or not, it has a time and a place. Is it the most nutrient dense? No. But does that mean it's bad? Also no. So I'm really big on I like to call it nutritious eating, which I know you don't call this clean eating, but I think you bring up a great point, because again, a lot of people think about healthy eating as eating clean. And then too, it becomes this whole thing of, well, everything has to be organic, which newsflash, it doesn't. It does not. Literally never has to be. If you never buy organic, it's okay. If you want to, by all means do so. But there's a lot more research that shows the pesticides are not quite what we thought. And at the end of the day, if you're eating produce that's conventionally harvested, that is so much better for you than not having any at all. Right.
I actually learned from a farmer that we asked him why he didn't get certified to be organic or go by organic. He's a no spray farm, but he's not an organic farm. And he said, actually, to become organic, you literally have to use specific sprays that are under
organic.
Term organic. So he's like, it's really not organic anyway. They're using chemicals and sprays. So I just call it no spray.
Yeah.
And he doesn't use any And he sprays on his farm and he doesn't, he tries not to use any chemicals or anything. He tries to use very natural, like
Mhm.
herbs and things to deter the
Yeah, to
bugs.
deter pests. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Which is really cool. And it just kind of gets into this whole thing of our health culture, our wellness culture here has this obsession with like we lose the forest for
Mhm.
the trees, right? So
Mhm.
Yes.
people who are not eating what I recommend is like minimum 5, closer to 7, ideally, servings of vegetables a day, and probably 3 to 5 servings of fruit. People who are getting nowhere close to this, which is okay, that's a lot, right? But are out here like, oh, well, I can't eat healthier because then I have to buy organic, which is so much more expensive. And then I also like it, the food goes bad in the fridge. It's like, oh my gosh, like stop. We're making excuses based on bad behavior or bad information that we've received. Like, again, it comes back to that whole thing. If you're not creating your own conscious and healthy eating framework, someone else is doing it for you.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
because you're
that.
getting all this noise, all this information coming from all these different places.
Yeah.
Mhm. I
Yeah,
love
that
that.
makes a lot of sense. So when you talk with someone about changing their relationship with food, what's like the first thing that you recommend or that you go through with them?
So normally the way I approach helping someone change their relationship with food and really incorporate these healthy habits is I identify like what are the most urgent things that we need to fix. Usually that is guilt around food, and that is feeling restrictive or obsessive around food, which is something a lot of us have. If you are in this yo-yo cycle, whether you actually go on diets, right? Like Weight Watchers, paleo, keto, I don't know what else is
Yeah.
there. All these crazy things. Whether or not you actually go on diets, or if you're just doing that thing of, oh my gosh, I have 2 weeks till the 4th of July. I need to stop eating all carbs and all processed food, and I need to eat clean. That's dieting too, whether or not you're on a diet.
Mhm.
So I think that's something too. A lot of us don't think we fall into this yo-yo dieting umbrella when it's like, you do. It's just not a formal diet. Anyway,
There's not a name for that diet.
yeah,
Yes.
it's your own version. It's
Yes.
a personal brand of dieting, right? So
Yes.
that's really where I focus first is where's the guilt? A lot of us have a lot of guilt and shame around food. You would not believe it. Oh my gosh.
I believe it.
When we
Mhm.
unpack it, it's like, oh, like I feel bad if I do this, and then I feel bad if I don't do this, and then I ate after 7 and now am I going to gain weight? And do I have to walk 10K steps tomorrow? But I don't really, it's like, oh my goodness, it's so exhausting. Like, what would you do with all the brain space you have if you're not constantly in doubt about all these things? So again, that comes back to my whole thing, which is helping clients build a structure and a framework that is intentional and set up for them. Because when there's no structure, you feel no confidence. And that's when all this doubt and all of these other ideas creep in. And that's when the noise of the online world of wellness, I don't really think it's very helpful, starts to sink in. And when you're spiraling at 9 o'clock, feeling like you're a failure, all of those things, all of the like whatever women's magazines we've read over the years, all of those headlines are like going through, so
Yeah.
all of that to say, that's really where I start is like the most urgent point, which is guilt and negative behaviors that are affecting your relationship with food. So I like to say, let's alleviate the stress, that mental backpack you're carrying of bad things around food and take the rocks out of your backpack, and then we can start to feel better. It's much easier to build habits when you're coming from a more neutral perspective. It's really hard to build better habits if you're feeling a lot of negative emotion around food. So
Mhm.
long-winded answer, but that's sort of the
No,
first.
I love that.
And then
Yeah.
I always like to give 2 to 5 very specific strategies to focus on that feel realistic. So I have a lot of moms who have kids that are working,
Mhm.
everyone's busy, everyone has things going on. What's realistic for them is going to look a lot different than what's realistic for a client who is single and has time to try 3 new recipes a week, right? So
Mhm.
it's like, it's got to be custom for you.
I love
Yeah.
it.
I love that too. And I love that getting rid of that, the guilt and the shame that goes with it first. Because like you said, you're going to create this framework. It's not going to do you any good if it's all coming back in there. So just being
Right.
able to put that backpack down and those rocks or whatever is weighing you down makes it so much easier. And we all have it, like you said, in some shape or form from growing up in this world.
Yeah.
I
Oh my
mean,
gosh. Yes.
and I love that you're doing this in a way that is empowering and long term in a healthy lifestyle. It's not just like, oh, let me help you, get to that 4th of July body or whatever. But
Right.
I love that you're taking it as a whole person, and let's take care of the emotions that come with it. And let's set up a structure that helps you succeed in life. Because I think right now, especially for women in this world, I have a niece that has an eating disorder. I have, there's all kinds of stuff happening. And
Yeah.
I look at like my kids' generation and I think, oh my gosh, you have even more pressures than we did, because
Mhm.
everything's online and everything's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is changing the way we look at food, and the relationship we have is just a fantastic thing. And I just hope that we can get that out to more people, because I think what you're doing is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's
Your
really,
movement.
yeah. Well, it's a big, luckily I'm not the only one doing it, which is good. But I think it is, something I run into a lot as well is there's a lot of conversation and stuff online about intuitive eating, which is great. I don't know how much you guys know about intuitive eating, but intuitive eating at its core does not support pursuing weight loss. So that is something that I think a lot of people, which intuitive eating on its own can be very powerful for a lot of women to embrace if they feel like, they're really ready to truly like give up dieting for good and are also ready to accept their body at whatever size it may be. So that I think really has an important place. What I find is that there's so many people that don't like that mold completely. They like the idea of having a better relationship with food, but they still want to pursue physical health goals or fitness goals. Or maybe they're like, I have 50 pounds of weight I want to lose and I don't feel good in my skin. Well, what do I do now? So that's really where I see is like, there's a really big gap, because there's your conventional fat loss, there's your conventional weight loss, right? Like getting shredded, like you follow this macro plan from your local personal trainer, who, by the way, is not qualified
Not
to
trained
lay
to do
out
that.
any kind of meal plan, but they all do it. They all do it. Oh my gosh, side topic. But so that's really where I see like there's this middle ground for sort of this measured approach that says, hey, we can be holistic and look at your whole person and where you want to be. But it's also okay if you want to lose some weight, right? Assuming it's like a healthy place, right? If it's someone who's already at a weight, a normal, like thin weight, and then they want to lose weight, okay, that's probably a sign we need to work more on body image and more of that like self-acceptance, right? But for a lot of people, they have weight that they would like to lose. And I really see it as like, who am I to tell you not to pursue this goal that you have? I would much rather help you build these realistic habits that work for you, because I believe it's fully possible to cultivate a great relationship with food and reach other physical health goals, fitness goals that you may have along the way too. I think we can do both. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people feel a little lost, is that it feels like you can't want the better relationship with food without relinquishing all of your physical goals.
You're
That's
bridging that gap between the two. And I think that's hugely important, because like you said, it's always, we're still in those extremes. It's like you either
Right.
have to do one or the other, instead of bridging it together and saying like, no, you can have it all. You can have it both. You can have this holistic self-care. You can be a holistic person. It's just, you can't be on just one side or just the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing too, is like, yeah, it's this new era of like, we're seeing more body positivity than ever, but like, even that on its own, body positivity on its own is a wonderful movement, but really all the stuff that's kind of like attributed to it, of like relinquishing and almost like looking down on any kind of physical health goal, to me is very strange. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel great in your body. Like I want everyone to feel great. So I'm like, who are we to tell people what they can and can't do with their bodies, So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. The whole body positivity thing, I love it. Then the fact that like, let's not judge each other, right? But I do think as a mom, as a Pilates teacher, as personal trainer myself, my job is to help educate and get people moving. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's just, like, oh, if you're comfortable, great. But I also think that you have to move for your heart health, for your
Yeah.
cardiovascular health, for so many other things. So it's not just, so that's where I that body positivity line a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think it's like we don't have to eschew the benefits of pursuing physical health, right? Like, and that actually is very closely correlated with mental and emotional well-being. So I'm like, oh my gosh, my whole thing is I'm like very level-headed. Like there's not really one extreme here. We don't need to be so extreme. Why are we still so extreme, right? But extremism sells. And when you're stuck in that yo-yo diet cycle, and like Yvette, you said earlier, when you're in that panic of like, oh, gotta go on this diet, the extreme thing that seems like it will help you get to where you think you want to go is obviously what's going to be most appealing. It's not going to be the rational approach. So,
right. Well, I love it. So tell everybody where they can find you and what services you offer, because I think this is fantastic.
oh, thank you. So I'm on Instagram all the time. My handle is @passionforplants. And I have a blog where I post a lot of articles. So that's www.passionforplants.co/blog. I have a YouTube channel. I do a lot of stuff on TikTok. I really like social media. I love to talk with people. I do a lot of videos. I do offer full service, like one-on-one nutrition and health coaching, which is really comprehensive, great for people who are needing to make a big change. There's a lot of that guilt and shame around food. It's difficult for them to change on their own. And then I also offer nutrition counseling, which is more for the person who's feeling overwhelmed with eating and with their health habits, needs accountability, but maybe doesn't need like the full-fledged like support throughout the way. And then I have a lot of courses as well. So you can find all of that on my website. And I think that's it. Oh, I host wellness retreats. I always forget to talk about
Say that retreat.
kind of a big deal. Yeah. So we have hosted 4 retreats so far in Sedona, Palm Springs, and Las Vegas. I have a retreat coming up that's more about plant-based nutrition and wellness in September here in Oregon, which I'm really excited about. And then we're hosting a 6-day women's adventure retreat in Hawaii in February. So lots of fun things going on. Definitely, again, you can find all of that on my website, but yeah, would love to have anyone join for those because I'm biased, but they're great. It's great to connect in person, and you just get so much more like in person, being able to spend a few days together.
I love that.
Definitely.
Yes.
Well, thank you
so much for talking with us. This has been like fantastic. I love what you're doing. And Yvette and I have talked a lot about how what you're doing kind of aligns with what we're trying to do and promote self-care and wellness. So thank you so much for joining us, and everybody go visit Katrina on her website and Instagram and everything else. And Yvette and I will be posting more, and we have happy hour this week. Join us to talk. Anything else, Yvette?
I don't think so. Have a great day, everyone. We can't wait to see you next time on Tank Tops and Sweaters.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.